All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast, where we redefine what second chances look like, one story at a time. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and today we're unpacking something that's been passed down like old furniture and quiet pain, and that's generational trauma. Now, this episode isn't about what happens after prison, it's about what happens before prison, the environments, beliefs, and survival patterns we inherit that shape who we become long before we have a say in it. Some of us didn't start on level ground. We started deep in holes dug by the people who raised us, who were themselves doing the best they could with what little healing they had. When I look back, I can trace, certain behaviors and fears right through my bloodline. The silence, the anger, the way love sometimes looked more like endurance than peace. But I've learned that you can't heal what you don't acknowledge, and you can't change what you keep repeating. So today, we're going to talk about those invisible cycles, or how those invisible cycles get created and how they can be broken. Because if we can understand the weight of what we inherited, we can finally start handing down something different. Welcome back to the Conviction Fiction. Welcome back, man. This is Antoine Rivers. Generational trauma. Generational trauma. That's what we're talking about today. It's that emotional debt passed from one generation to the next. You might not see it on paper, but you feel it in your bones. It shows up in how you love, how you fight, how you trust, how you even parent. For me, that inheritance came wrapped in silence and toughness. I come from a family that believed in pushing through, like no matter what, you got to push through. We didn't talk about emotions much. We just survived them. I watch the men in my family, uncles, even my father, cousins, they handled stress a lot of times with anger or distance. It was never called trauma. It was just life. But that survival mode became the only mode that I knew. Growing up early, I knew that emotion was a liability. Crying was considered a weakness, like many of us. We consider crying a weakness. Asking for help meant that you couldn't handle your business. And that mindset followed me into adulthood, into relationships, into every room I walked in. So it's important to unpack that. That generational trauma made me think that strength meant being unbreakable. Not realizing real strength came from being able to bend without snapping. Trauma, it doesn't just live in the mind; it lives in the body. It teaches you to flinch before anyone raises a hand. It reaches you to shut down. It teaches you to shut down way before someone walks away. And if no one ever tells you that's not normal, you grow up believing that's just who you are. When I got locked up, I had a lot of time to trace those threads. I'd be sitting on my bunk, replaying moments from my childhood, the yelling, the confusion, the quiet tension that filled the house like smoke. I realized I wasn't just fighting my own mistakes. I was fighting patterns generations deep. I saw my father's habits in my reactions. I saw my grandma's silence in my pride. That was humbling. The hardest truth to accept was that I wasn't broken. I was just pretty much repeating what I had known. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. You can't blame people for what they didn't know. You can't blame people for failing to heal, but you can hold yourself accountable for what you choose to pass down to the next generation. Breaking the cycle means stopping the handoff, saying, hey, this trauma won't live another generation through me. Now, it's not about pointing fingers at your parents or grandparents. It's about understanding the world they came from, the pain they carried, and the tools they never had. Because once you understand the why, you can finally start working on the how. And that's what this show is strictly about, right? The ability to overcome those generational gaps or that generational trauma that's been passed down. In most families, silence is tradition. We protect secrets more fiercely than we protect truth. Growing up, there were things we just didn't talk about. We don't talk about the arguments, the addictions, the pain. Everybody knew, but nobody said anything. That silence becomes its own form of trauma. It teaches you to suppress, not express. It convinces you that love means endurance, not honesty. When I was younger, I can remember sitting at family gatherings, like you hear the laughter, the stories, the people, the music, and underneath it all, there was a little bit of tension. I could feel it even when I didn't understand it. That's how generational trauma hides. It hides under smiles and the I'm fine. That's how it hides. So it wasn't until I started doing my own internal work that I realized that silence was one of the biggest lies we inherited. When we don't talk about pain, we normalize it. When we don't name it, we can't heal it. After I came home, I started having different kinds of conversations with my family, especially my father. Real ones. Not about who did what wrong, but about how those old wounds shaped who we became. It wasn't easy. Some people, even to this day, they don't want to go there. Others, they just don't know how to go there. But that's part of the process, giving grace to those still living in their own silence. There was one conversation that changed me, and that was with my dad. We talked about his childhood, the things he never had, the fears that he carried. Hearing him tell the truth, it softened me. Hearing that truth from him really did something to me. It reminded me that the same pain I was trying to escape had also shaped him. Now, the conversation didn't erase what happened, but it helped me to understand. And when we're talking about someone that is telling you straight up, hey, I didn't have much education, that, my mother verbally abused me. Hearing all that stuff from him, that's is different. You know what I'm saying? And he worked to counteract that generational curse. So yeah, he gave me the business. I'm not even gonna lie. He gave me, my brother, not necessarily my sister, but he gave us the business. And later on in life, just having that conversation with him after I got out, it really shaped who I am today. That's the power of acknowledgement, right? It breaks the curse of invisibility. When you say, I see it, you take the first step towards changing it. But acknowledgement, of course, also means facing yourself. I had to admit that my silence had hurt people too. That inability to express love created confusion in people who cared about me. Healing demanded a bit of humility. I couldn't keep blaming where I came from or where I was going. So if silence is inherited, then honesty must be learned. It's uncomfortable, it's emotional, but it's very necessary because you can't break a cycle you refuse to confront. Okay. Now this is the hard part. The hard part is healing. Healing sounds good in theory until you realize it asks everything of you. It's not just crying it out or saying little positive affirmations. It's actually confronting the ugly truth about who you've become because of who you were taught to be. During my time inside, I used to watch men to try and run from themselves. I watched men run from themselves, staying busy with weight benches, cards, basketball, anything to avoid reflection. But the silence of a cell doesn't lie. Eventually, you will meet yourself. I met myself too, and I didn't like who I saw at first. I realized I was carrying anger that didn't even belong to me. Anger that was passed down. My dad worked himself to death trying to prove his worth. He fought the world because in his mind, it never gave him a fair shot. I fought everything because I thought fighting was surviving. Healing for me started with writing. Journaling became my therapy before I could, start going to therapy or before I was forced into classes. Right? I wrote letters. I never sent a lot of those letters like to my dad or to my younger self, to the people I hurt. I would write them and just read it and understand. It was like therapy. Each page felt like lifting a brick off my chest. When I got home, I kept that practice going. I still write to this day. I surround myself with people who were or are doing the work now. Not perfect people, but intentional people. And that's how this whole podcast was born, out of conversations about pain, growth, and transformation. So healing, like I always say, reentry, all of this stuff, it isn't linear. You'll have days when you fall back into old patterns, but the key is awareness. You got to catch yourself, correct yourself, and celebrate those small wins. Sometimes healing means forgiving people who will never apologize. Sometimes it means forgiving yourself for not knowing better sooner. I had to unlearn survival. I had to learn peace. That's a different kind of strength. So it's not flashy. It's kind of quiet, steady, and disciplined. So waking up and choosing not to let yesterday dictate who you are today, that's a skill that many of us have to learn. Every person listening right now, whether you've been incarcerated or not, has some kind of healing. Maybe it's from family, maybe it's from failure, maybe from self-inflicted pain. But healing isn't about erasing your past. It's about reinterpreting your past. You stop asking, like, why did this happen to me? And start asking, like, more, what is this teaching me? Right? That's what we're trying to do. That's the turning point. Okay. Now, from breaking generational cycles, we have to learn more than just survival. It's about transforming that survival into a legacy. Now, when I came home, I realized freedom meant more than not being locked up. It meant not being bound by the same mental chains that had been passed down for years. I didn't just want to be different for me. I wanted to make my children feel the difference. I remember recently I was tucking my little son in and he asked me a question. He was like, were you scared when you were gone? I was like, first of all, where you get that from? That question told me he saw more than I thought he did. I told him the truth. Yeah, because he read the books and he's seen me working and talking, and he got little posters downstairs, and mom bought the book, his grandfather bought the book. So yeah, I was scared when he asked me this question. I was scared of what he would think. So I just told him I was scared of failing, man. I was scared of repeating, scared of never breaking free. But I told him fear doesn't disqualify you from growth. It just means you care about what's on the other side. That's when I knew my legacy wasn't about what I'd accomplished. It was about what I'd repaired. Generational change happens in the everyday moments, like showing up to the basketball, the football, the baseball game, listening instead of trying to lecture or tell them what to do. Just apologizing when you're wrong. It's all about breaking the idea that men have to be emotionless, that love has to be something that hurts, that success only comes through struggle. The true second chance is generational peace. When your children don't have to recover from their childhood, when they inherit emotional tools instead of emotional wounds. And here's the thing. Legacy isn't built on perfection. It's built on consistency. Every healed response, every honest conversation, every time you choose love over pride, that's legacy work. I mean, I can look around at where I am now, like running a business, hosting this podcast, writing books that speak life into others. And I realize every bit of that is the fruit of broken cycles. Because at some point, I stopped running from pain and started learning from it. Now, breaking cycles isn't a moment, it's a mission, right? And the mission doesn't stop when you heal. It continues every time you share your story. So someone else can possibly heal too. That's what second chances are really about. Not restarting, rebuilding, not repeating, but actually redemption, like redeeming yourself, right? All right. So before we close out, I want to leave you with a resource that's going to like change your life, resource that builds on everything we talked about today and more. If you're on this journey of healing, growth, and second chances, grab a copy of my new book. It's called Turning Forward. I have a copy right here. Turning Forward, The Work Beyond Fear. It's more than just a memoir, it's more a workbook. I mean, we have pages in here where you can actually do the work. That's why it's entitled The Work Beyond Fear. And of course, if you haven't like caught up with everything that we're doing here on the Conviction Fiction, be sure to get No Turning Back. It's also available on Amazon. Links will be in the bio. But yeah, that's what we are doing here. We're changing lives. We're changing the narrative. Like I said, this is more than a book. It's more than a book. It's actually a blueprint. I break down practical steps to help you rebuild your mindset, navigate reentry, and stay grounded when life tries to pull you back into old patterns. So whether you're coming home, supporting someone who is, or just trying to create real change from the inside out, this guide is for you. You can find Turning Forward on Amazon. You got No Turning Back there. Just search the title or hit the link in my bio. Remember, freedom isn't the finish line. It's the foundation, and the real work begins when fear ends. I want to thank you again for joining me on the Conviction Fiction podcast. If you heard yourself in these words, know this, and know this. If you heard yourself in these words, know this. You're not alone and you're not stuck. The same pain that once trapped you can become the very tool that frees you and others. Breaking cycles takes courage, it takes grace, and it takes time. But every generation that follows will thank you for doing what others could not. So keep healing, keep growing, keep changing the narrative. Until next time, I'm Antoine Rivers, reminding you that freedom isn't just walking out of the gates, it's walking with purpose. See you next week.